Hello, Cliffy here from Cliff Dive into Movies, and let's take a deep dive to 1965 and let's talk about Mara of the Wilderness. Now, admittedly, I don't usually remember the very first time I saw a movie on TV, but Mara of the Wilderness is one of the few exceptions. I remember I put up quite a bit of a fuss because it was my bedtime and I wanted to stay up and watch the end of the movie. I've always liked Tarzan, Cave Girl, and Jungle Girl movies. In fact, this might have been my introduction to Jungle Girl movies. And yes, this is a Jungle Girl movie. I'll explain why later. But the big reason was that this had a cool cast. First, the lead is played by Adam West, of course, Mr. Batman himself. The head forest ranger was played by Denver Pyle, who was Mad Jack on the life and times of Grizzly Adams, one of my favorite childhood TV shows. And I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, that I knew him from Grizzly Adams and not Dukes of Hazzards. So this must have been the late 70s before I had seen Dukes of Hazzards. The bad guy was played by Theo Marcus, who was in the haunted house episode of Star Trek called Cat's Paw. And of course, Laurie Saunders, who in the credits is listed as Linda Saunders, makes quite an impression. Also, Mara's mom was played by Eve Brent, who was Jane to Gordon Scott's Tarzan. And I just thought that these were all cool people. And I think I must have been about 6, 7, maybe 8 at the time. When the movie was released in 1965, plenty of promotional material was made to promote the movie: lobby cards, press books, photos, the usual stuff. Even a 45 record was released of Marvel's theme to promote it on radio stations. Nowadays, however, the movie has pretty much been forgotten. The movie was released on VHS in the 1980s, but there hasn't been an official DVD or Blu ray release. There are DVDs on eBay, and I could be wrong, but I think they're just digital copies of the VHS. Currently, it's not on YouTube, and I couldn't find it on any streaming channel. Also, I like how on the VHS cover, Mara's costume has gone from a one piece to a two-piece outfit. The movie starts with Dr. Franklin Wade, played by Sean McClure, living in Alaska to study wolves for his book, Social Coordinates Among Vertebrate Species, that he is almost finished with. His wife and daughter Mara have come to live with him for the final 2 months of his research. Dr. Wade has made a home out of an old wolf den, and Mara quickly makes friends with some wolf puppies. After 2 weeks, Mara's father and mother are both killed by a black bear. Mara survives by hiding and is adopted by a wolf pack. Years pass, shown as a montage of snow falling. And there's a part where Mara's father's rifle is being covered in snow. It's a nice little scene, nice little montage, until you realize that Mara's dad and mom weren't buried and that Mara's dad is decomposing next to the gun. Years have passed, 12 in fact. Forest Ranger Kelly, Denver Pyle, is meeting with his summer relief, Ken Williams, Adam West. While there, Williams is planning to finish his thesis on wolves by finishing Dr. Wade's book. He also hopes to find out what happened to the Wade family. Kelly tells Williams that he will be very lonely. Turns out he won't be. Mara has grown up to be a very lovely 19-year-old woman who lives in the wilderness. Also in the forests is Major William Jarnigan, Theo Marcus, a trapper who collects animals for circuses and zoos, and his helper employee Friday, played by Robert Contreras. The relationship between Jarnigan and Friday is an interesting one because Friday clearly dislikes Jarnigan, and Jarnigan clearly has no respect for Friday. Also, I'm pretty sure that Friday is not the guy's actual name. And it's kind of hard to figure out if Friday is an employee, a prisoner. Every time Jarnigan gets into a fight, and there will be many of them, Friday never once helps him, but he never doesn't not help him. He kind of just acts as a bystander until the very end. So it's kind of hard to figure out the Friday character. Also, like how they very quickly established the characters. The first time we see the adult Mara, she's playing with the wolves, and the very first time we see Jarnigan, he's shooting at the wolves. When Williams gets to his cabin, he meets retired Major William Jarnigan. The two men immediately dislike each other and proceed to have a conversation where Jarnigan tries to ever so subtly tell Williams he can't tell him what he can and can't do when it comes to hunting wolves. And with the same vibe, William tells him, yes, I can. Anyway, the cabin has been ransacked. Interestingly, Williams blames Jarnigan, Jarnigan blames raccoons, and Friday blames the ghost. The ghost is a local Indian legend, similar to Bigfoot that has existed for a long time. It was even mentioned to Marwa's father when the airplane pilot brought Marwa and her mother to visit her dad. Jarnigan and Friday go to check out a bait trap set up to catch wolves and find that the rope has been cut with a knife. Next to the trap, they find a bare footprint. Friday says it is the ghost, and Jarnigan says that it is just a superstition and that it belongs to a wild Indian boy not yet full grown by the size of the print. Williams is out taking account of the wolves, and as he does this, in the distance, he sees Marwa swimming naked in a lake. He approaches, and she runs off. Although she hasn't seen another human in a long time, she's rather embarrassed to be seen naked, and she hides behind a tree, and then she runs back to her cave, although she's pretty intrigued by seeing another human. Interestingly, if Jarnigan is telling the truth, he's only been there for a month, and somehow he has never seen Mara. And in fact, today is the first day that he's even seen a footprint. However, Williams has been there for exactly 1 day, and he's already seen Mara. When Williams tried to approach Mara at the lake, he fell into the lake and she ran off. Later that day, he's drying off at his cabin and he's looking at newspaper clippings and he puts two to two together and realizes that woman must be Mara, who's now 19 years old. Of course, she's being played by 24-year-old Laurie Saunders. The next day, Williams visits Jarnigan's camp and sees that the captured animals are not being given enough water. While he's giving the animals water, Mara has discovered Jarnigan's newest wolf trap and uses a knife to cut down the bait and runs off with it. Jarnigan discovers the wild boy has cut down the bait and decides to rebait the trap, but first he starts by setting steel traps around to catch either wolf or the wild boy. While doing this, Williams comes by and says to stop because he has found out that a human is running with the wolves. Jarnigan doesn't believe Williams when he mentions that it is a young woman. Jarnigan tells Williams if he wants the traps gone, he has to remove them himself. Williams starts to remove the traps, and Jarnigan hits Williams, and they fight. Friday just stands there watching because he never helps Jarnigan in any of his fights. The fight ends when Williams gets his arm and foot stuck in traps. Jarnigan decides he doesn't need to use meat for his bait anymore. Williams will do. Wouldn't be the first time somebody got killed because they got stuck in somebody else's wolf trap. Mara is napping when buzzards circling nearby, or some type of birds, I'm not really sure what they are, alert her and the two wolves that she lives with that there is meat at the wolf trap. I'm not exactly sure why she would be interested in this because she literally just took some meat from there not too long ago, and I'm not quite sure how the birds flying in the distance wake her up, but they do. Mara goes to the wolf trap and discovers Williams stuck in the traps. She attacks Williams when one of the wolves gets stuck in a trap, but Williams stops her when he keeps repeating her name. William gets Mara to help free him, and then they free the wolf. Mara takes the wounded Williams to her cave home. Strangely, Mara's mom and dad slept in a bed, but now the bed has disappeared, and Mara and Williams sleeps on the floor. The next day, Jarnigan discovers Williams gone and all the traps sprung. He figures Williams and the girl have gone up the mountain and decides he will wait for them. Inside the cave, Williams finds a typewriter and other items belonging to Mara's parents and also an old first aid kit, but nothing inside the kit is any good. Mara on her own goes looking for a new first aid kit. First she goes to Jarnigan's camp and ransacks it. She also frees all of Jarnigan's caged animals. Then she goes to Williams' sack and finds a first aid kit. She's more gentle when looking in the cabin, and I take it was her who ransacked the cabin earlier. Jarnigan and Friday jump out from behind the curtain to a never-seen-before second room. Jarnigan and Mara fight. He wins. Friday just stands there watching, as he usually does. Then wolves attack the cabin. Jarnigan wakes Mara up and they fight again until he knocks her out for a second time. Friday finally has had enough and fights Jarnigan. Friday gets choked until he passes out. In the meantime, wolves go to get Williams. First, Williams goes to Jarnigan's camp and uses a radio to call for backup from Kelly. Then he goes to the cabin. When Williams makes it to the cabin, Friday is giving Mara water and Jarnigan is shooting the wolves that are circling the cabin. Williams gets into the cabin and fights Jarnigan. During the fight, Mara escapes and runs away. Jarnigan wins the fight and chases after Mara. Friday helps Williams, and Williams goes after the two. Jarnigan makes it to Mara's cave just as Mara leaves with some furs. Jarnigan continues to chase after Mara. Mara hides from everybody. Williams and Jarnigan fight. Williams finally wins. Williams instructs Friday to take Jarnigan back to his camp, but to tie him up. Williams goes after Mara. Without a gun, Friday assumes Williams will be killed. Mara returns to her cave, and Williams follows. Kelly has gotten William's message and has come to investigate to see what happened. First, he goes to the cabin and finds it surrounded by dead wolves. The cabin's been ransacked, and there are a bunch of barefoot footprints all over the place. Not knowing what happened, he goes over to Jarnigan's camp to see if Jarnigan has any answers. And when he gets there, he sees Jarnigan is drinking and is locked in an animal cage. Friday tells them what has happened and gives him William's note. Kelly notes that Williams is on leave on his own volition. And that's pretty much the plot to Mara of the Wilderness. I did like the movie. It's a solid B picture. It's pretty good. The story moves along pretty fast, and there's no real plot problems. I liked Adam West as Ken Williams. He's a very nice, polite, nice kind of guy. I like how in the beginning of the movie, before he realized that Jarnigan isn't a very nice guy, as a sign of respect, he always refers to him as Major. Williams is kind of a straight, non-campy version of Bruce Wayne. So seeing him in this, I can easily see how he got the part of Bruce Wayne, which he was perfect for. Laurie Saunders is perfect as Mara. Mara never says anything, but Laurie is very expressive with her face, so you can tell exactly what she's thinking. And also, the part was pretty, very rigorous for her because it doesn't look like she ever has any type of a sandals on, so she's running around barefoot in the forest, which couldn't have been too easy. One thing that they do different in this movie than they do in other Jungle Girl movies is that there's quite a few shots of a close up of her running barefoot. And later on, you'll see the footprint that she made. In fact, they do this roughly about 4 times. I don't think I've ever seen a Jungle Girl movie where they show the footprint of the gal running barefoot. They'll mention it, but they don't usually show it because there's only one person going around barefoot, so who else would it be? And I know that she lives in a forest, but technically Mara is a jungle girl because she meets all the requirements. She's an orphan. She lives in the wilderness. This is a forest, not a jungle. She lives with the animals. She's not the ruler of them. She's got a sexy outfit. This is a family film, so it's a one-piece outfit, but it's got the bare shoulder. She's barefoot. That's pretty much all the requirements for a jungle girl. And then there's one of my favorite characters of all time, Jarnigan. Most actors say that all characters, even the villains, think that they're the hero in their story. I'm pretty sure Jarnigan thinks that he's the villain in his story. Everything that he does is about how can he serve himself. He thinks there's a boy running loose around in the wilderness, and he thinks, "Oh, I can sell him to the circus." When he's talking to Williams, Williams makes a comment about having some fancy binoculars, and Jarnigan is like, "Hey, I can sell those to somebody." He's pretty much a badass, but he's not a coward, and he can quite pretty good because he gets into 1 fight with Friday, 2 fights with Mara, and 3 fights with Williams, and he only loses 1 fight.
Social Coordinates Among Vertebrate Species, Volume 1. Must be fascinating.
And that's Mara of the Wilderness. I hope you liked this video as much as I liked making it. Check out the other videos that I have on my channel, and take care.